So the human Umwelt is on the move, and what we're doing is we are, in the future as we move, we're going to increasingly be choosing our own plug-and-play peripheral devices. And in theory, we have no reason to think that the brain is limited in what it can incorporate into direct perceptual experience. So what this means is we're no longer a natural species that waits for Mother Nature's sensory gifts on her time scale, but instead, like any good parent, what Mother Nature has given us is the tools to go out and create our own experiences. And so what I've just told you about are signals from the outside world. So what I've been talking about is how we pick up on signals from the outside world, electromagnetic radiation or stock data from the net or anything like that. But I want to quickly take a few minutes and talk about signals beyond that. And what I specifically mean is signals from your body, signals from your brain and body. And this is what I'm going to call the experience Umwelt, not just the sensory Umwelt, but in other words, the kind of experiences you can have, the kinds of thoughts you can think are all actually dependent on the details of your body and your brain and the kind of signals that you're able to have there. Now, in order to illustrate this, I'm going to step back for a minute to tell you about something called embodied cognition. And the idea is this. Everybody starts with this intuition, including neuroscientists. This starts with this intuition that what happens is you see something scary, you detect that stimulus, your brain registers fear, and once you have fear, then you change your facial expression, your stomach tightens up, your heart rate increases, and so on. But it turns out that's only part of the story and probably the smallest part of the story. Because what's really happening is the opposite, which is that your visual system picks up on stimuli, sends all these signals out to your body, your stomach tightens, your heart rate increases, and so on, and your brain interprets those bodily signals as fear. In other words, I must be scared. This must be fear that I'm experiencing. And this is what leads to the idea of embodied cognition, which is to say that your body provides a context. Your body provides the context for you to understand your experiences. In other words, how you feel about anything, the emotional experience you have, is completely a function of what's happening in your body. So let me give you just a few quick examples of this. There was an experiment done a little while ago where they had young men walk across a very scary bridge like this, and they also had a control group of young men walk the same distance but in a laboratory hallway. Okay, halfway along, they meet a young, beautiful female research assistant who asks them some questions. And it turns out that in subsequent questionnaires, what they figured out is that the guys who were on the bridge found that young woman much more attractive and thought they were in love with her if they were on the bridge. And the reason is because while they're on there, their heart's beating fast, and they mistake that for love. They actually believe they're in love with her. Okay. Because we read these, that's the only way you ever know if you're in love with somebody. Here's another quick example. Here's another example is let's say you're reading an essay and you're holding a pencil in your mouth. If you're instructed to hold that pencil in your lips versus in your teeth, if you hold it in your teeth, you'll end up concluding that the essay was much funnier. You'll actually believe it was funnier. Why? Because your brain detects that you were smiling the whole time, and so it actually imposes that on your whole experience. Here's something else, and a colleague of mine recently wrote a book on this. I just find this so amazing and useful, which is that for a lot of patients with anxiety, with really bad anxiety problems, it turns out there's a really quick and easy cure, which is if they get injected with Botox, which unfurrows their brow, their anxiety goes away. And the reason is because their brain, it's this feedback loop, but their brain is watching for the bodily signals, and when it detects this furrowed brow, it interprets that as anxiety, and if you make that go away, the brain says, okay, great. I mean, it's the same thing with people who have fear of public speaking, and they take a beta blocker like propranolol. All that does is it prevents their heart from beating faster, and then they believe they are not scared anymore. right? You actually believe you're not scared. Nothing's changed. You still have an audience and so on, but the thing is you're not getting those bodily signals back. Okay, so this has led me to really think about what our technology is going to do, how our technology that changes our body is going to change our experience Umwelt. And so, you know, I work in Houston in the Texas Medical Center, which is where there's been a new device invented. It's been around for several years now. But what it is it's a ventricular assist device. So this is for people who have failing heart and they need a bridge to transplant. And so they get implanted with these ventricular assist devices. But here's the key. Unlike you know, Mother Nature, which has this pumping heart, these devices are continuous flow. They don't have a pump. They don't have a pump. And so what happens is you don't have a pulse. Because what happens is oxygenated blood just gets pushed through your system, which is all that needs to happen. The only reason we have a pulse is because Mother Nature didn't have enough time or experience to come up with, you know, wheels and motors and so on. So we have a pump, but you get exactly the same thing out of having this continuous flow system. And by the way, these are not rare. Lots of people have these now. And in fact, Dick Cheney had one for 15 months. And what happens, that's not about Dick Cheney. I realize now that looks like a political joke, but it's not. All I want to illustrate here is that, so one of the things my lab is setting up to do right now is to study these patients to figure out, well, what does that do to change their experience of the world when you don't have a heartbeat that speeds up and slows down and so on. So, I mean, the first basic thing I want to do is take some of these patients and have them watch a scary movie and ask them if it was scary. And presumably they're going to say, nope, I wasn't scared. Because whatever's going on cognitively, they're not having that experience that allows their brain to interpret it like that.